Hello, welcome to the Writing Centrifuge. Today there will be spoilers for Chainsaw Man Manga Part 1, which is chapters 1 through 97, Chainsaw Man the anime adaptation as of today, January 5th, Death Note the anime adaptation, and nothing else. So, let's get started. Makima is one of the more popular of the Chainsaw Man cast, even though most fans recognize right away that she's bad news, because she definitely is. I've mentioned some of the terrible things she's done in my other videos, but nothing has quite been enough to cover it all. And that's to be expected when discussing other characters. That's why she gets a video all to herself as the antagonist of Part 1 of Chainsaw Man. This entire video would be broken up much like the others were, in a loose chronological order. First, I want to outline what her plan was, more or less, how it actually played out. And then I'll discuss both introductions of her character, both anime and manga. Then I'll go through the things she does one at a time, more or less reflect on how cruel she was actually throughout the early days, and it will show just how cold-hearted she actually is. Lastly, I want to discuss what went wrong with her plan, and the only thing that put an end to her. Makima's plan in full context could almost be described as simple, but the absolute hold she has on crucial information, as well as her heartless and effective manipulation tactics, make her nearly unstoppable. Her plan in basic terms goes as follows. She would make Denji connect to the people in Division 4. Then she would let that connection grow over the course of the story. She would also eventually allow Denji to kill the Gun Fiend, because it would both deeply wound his heart and bring the fame of Chainsaw Man all over the world, which would weaken him. The final steps to her plan were to crush Denji's spirit so that he would give in to losing himself and becoming Chainsaw Man. And then defeat a weakened Chainsaw Man so that she could use his power to erase all the names of those things that she deems to get in the way of her idealized world. This is some pretty brutal stuff, and it's hard to imagine a plan as bold as that one to work, but it nearly did. She had planned everything out meticulously, and had some pieces fall exactly where they were supposed to be, and where they would be most convenient for her, without even doing anything to pull those things her way on purpose. I'm specifically talking about Aki and the Angel, but all of the things considered, Makima was extremely lucky in a lot of the things that went right for her. I understand that this section is settled 20 steps ahead, but a lot of things just seem to go right. It isn't bad writing at all, and even more complicated stories about manipulation like Death Note have moments and even victories that are decided by luck. The thing that separates a stupid victory won by sheer luck and what happens in both Death Note and Chainsaw Man is effort. What makes characters like Nier and Makima do with those bits of luck come back home their way make all the difference. Makima purposely decided to craft an intricate plan around Denji the moment she met him, and made many choices as well as creating circumstances where she could be lucky again. If these characters didn't do anything in their power to be careful, and work very hard to achieve what they ultimately wanted, then it would have felt cheap, but not a single thing these characters did was without purpose. And it felt relentless, that this drive that sets them apart from those who are just lucky. It felt kind of bad for those who are just lucky at that point. It's not even fair. The first and most lucky thing that happens to Makima is that she ran into Denji in the first place. He was about to skedaddle, and if she hadn't come herself, or if she had decided to postpone that mission, or if Denji had left without killing the zombies, then she would have likely never even met Denji. His goal, his contract dictated that he live out his dreams of living a normal life. He would have undoubtedly accomplished that if not for Makima's intervention, as a person like Denji would stop at nothing and even risk his own life to achieve his ambition. And more importantly, his dream. Makima was able to shift Denji's view towards the future that she wanted him to see. Because of that fateful interaction, Part 1 takes place. As I'll discuss later, it's also lucky that he didn't escape when he had the chance, and that she was able to sink her claws into him before he decided to ditch. At that point, she might have eventually caught him, but I still think that having the biggest part of your master plan that she likely wanted to meet for years, if not decades, fall right into your arms, not suspect a thing, and be in a vulnerable enough position to manipulate is just perfect for her. Rise even states that Denji was basically doomed the minute Makima got to him, and that everything she did up to that point was probably for nothing. The events of Part 1 100% agree with her, because Makima cannot be stopped, not even in hell. Other things may have come her way via luck, but it was her effective and ruthless methods that make her Makima. And her plan was no mistake. It didn't require luck to pull off. Chainsaw Man's story begins with Denji and Pochita, but as soon as they got their freedom, it was immediately taken away. After Denji loses Pochita in a scene that always makes me cry, he decides the best course of action is to eliminate the scum that caused Pochita to die in the first place. But it was mostly as cathartic justice so that he can live a better life. He spends all night cutting away at the zombies until Makima enters. The first time I saw her, I didn't know what to make of her. I had probably only heard rumors about how people really liked her, but I had no other point of reference. But she immediately made my danger senses go off. I could tell from the moment she hugged Denji that he had to get away. But he didn't, and at that point, I guess he couldn't. The moment is interesting to me because it has a lot of extra layers when you peel back the events in full context. Makima saw Denji in his chainsaw form, which means she must have immediately recognized who he was, but saw that he was part human. When she checks whether or not he's human, I wonder if she was disappointed to find out he was. The other layer is the Chainsaw Man's dream. Pochita tells Denji in the last chapter of Part 1 that his dream was to be hugged. That gives me so many questions as to how much Makima knew in that moment. She said that she was a fan of his, so did she know his dream? Is that why she hugged him? Or was that just sick irony? I'm confident that Denji was the one who wanted the hug, so did she do it to see what would happen? Makima ended up revealing so much about the world. But she also left me with a bunch of questions about her. This moment solidified Denji's fate, and my unending curiosity with this scene. Makima is such a manipulative character that we can't tell much by what she says or does. In a way, she reminds me of Rise, and how I still wonder what parts of her with Denji were real, and how much was a part of the act. We know that she liked him just as much as we know Makima didn't care about Denji at all. The only way to answer any questions is to judge their actions and what they said when they thought they either had nothing to lose or nothing to gain by lying. Or even worse, gaining things by telling the truth. Now I'll discuss the one scene that wasn't adapted in the anime. The weird muscle thing that took over a little girl's body. I thought that the muscle thing was going to be one of the many things not included in the anime, like Berserk 1997 versus the manga, but the more I read, the more I realized it was 1-to-1. Rereading the animated portion of the story had me discover that it is beat for beat, panel for panel, the same. Every moment, nearly every piece of dialogue was identical. It was crazy and unexpected, but Chainsaw Man the anime was an absolutely great adaptation. Not because it did everything the same, but because it enhanced the reading material and truly feels the same. Only subtle differences that are mostly in my head are different. So the muscle thing not being included was unique in that way. I gave it some thought, and I think the reason why it happened is because of two things. Thing one, it detracted from the mysticism of Makima. In the manga, she almost immediately gives him an order to risk his life after just meeting him. There could actually be some reasons for why she did this, like she wanted him to experience that despair she would end up employing after she realized that Denji could just get over trivial things. Making him give up on life by having him experience just one more horrible thing could have been her plan, but that was never stated. I think it makes sense not to keep it in because of the other, more convincing reason. Denji was willing to run away from Makima during that section. He offered to take the girl and the weird buff worm with him. This also makes the audience realize that Denji, at least manga Denji, isn't immediately entranced by Makima. And there's some things that would probably go more smoothly if it was removed. Him falling for her almost immediately makes more sense if you take that scene out. Although, it does also take out something good. I like that it added a sense of fickleness to Denji's part of the relationship. It could just be my interpretation of the manga, but it felt like he didn't fall nearly as hard for Makima in the manga, which made Makima's plans feel more elaborate. In the anime, it feels like we're watching a one-sided love story, but to me, the manga felt more like a person using another person, and that previously used person moving on with their life in the most damn way possible. That is to say, Denji has a way of moving past things that's unlike any other character I've ever seen. Denji doesn't just forget about the things that happen or hold on to everything. He chooses what to hold on to in terms of his values. One fun example is Kobani. After she tried to kill him, he no longer accepted her as a potential partner, but in no other way did he show any animosity towards her, and they ate dinner at the same table, right after it all went down. I'll try not to get too deep into it before my next video, which is about him, but the anime made Makima out to be this almost alien figure of attraction, an intrigue for Denji. The reality is that it could have felt like that to him, but if that's your interpretation, so be it. But I personally like my interpretation. And if anything was to be removed, it wouldn't. Makima feels like she has to work harder to win Denji over in the manga, and it makes it feel like she can lose him if she isn't careful at times, like how he had a sense of loyalty to Rize. It's interesting that one small part of the story completely changed how I viewed it, and I guess there's a chance that's why it was removed. Out of everything from the grooming, to the gore, to the explicit scenes, it was the little girl alone with a monster in the woods that was too much to keep in. Or maybe it just worked better without it in their opinion. I still like that part, and it's now probably one of my favorites, because it makes me feel special to know that a short scene like that exists, and changes how a reader or viewer can interpret such a great story. One major part of the recontextualization of this story that always makes it more intense and tragic is the setup and subsequent actions taken by Makima. I want to explore what she might have known about the characters and how she planned to set them up from the beginning. First, I'll start with putting Denji in Division 4. It seems obvious that she wanted him to go to a place that he would fit in, so why Division 4? The immediate answer is that it's full of people more or less like him, monsters under her iron fist. I believe that she partially made the choice to put him there, like how you would bring a puppy to watch a better behaved older dog. The idea is to have them learn by example, and knowing what we know about her, this could have been exactly what she was thinking. It's a group of similar-minded people in a position in which they don't have any power, just like him. Denji cannot be allowed to leave in Makima's mind because her plans need him specifically. So, if she makes it to where he can't leave, but he is also surrounded by people who have more or less accepted that fact, then there was a pretty good chance that he would just think it was normal and not question it. In a way, this did happen. Rize's argument for why Denji should leave is the perfect example of Makima's brainwashing. Makima convinced Denji that he was living the high life and had no other options. She also surrounded him with friends and that would make him feel like he belonged there. Makima set this boy up, and Rize was the first to point this out to Denji. She explained that it was normal for people in Japan to have basic living necessities, and that staying within public safety was actually hindering his ability to live an even more normal life, since he was risking his life and killing all at this time. I mean, pretty yikes. I also think that there was a layer of personal tragedy behind why she, Rize, pointed that out. I want to believe that when she told Denji that it might take some time, but there was a chance they could go to school together one day, that she was being honest. I think the way she saw it, maybe for a little bit, they could get away. Much like how she was going back at the end of her arc before going back. I think that her plan was when running back to the cafe was to grab Denji and book it somewhere far away, and maybe find a way to live a normal life. But Denji did not get the concept, and for a good while it almost seemed like he had forgotten. Luckily, he didn't. Although it shows how deeply this initial setup was, and how Makima made him under her control. Even when he had a chance to escape, he didn't even try because she tricked him into idealizing the situation he was in. Man, it is so tempting to just go into Denji analysis, but alas, not yet. Back to Makima. Not only was Denji up in Division 4 good because of friends, but also Aki. It seemed to me like Makima understood a lot about Aki, to an almost scary degree. I didn't discuss it in his video, but I've always found it interesting that Aki likes Makima, because he doesn't really do anything about it. It could just be his self-worth issues at play, but regardless, Makima uses it to her full advantage when setting Aki up with Denji. She knows that in the moment Aki likes her, but also that Denji has some latent feelings as well, that she could properly use to crush him later, of course. Once again, I think she used the puppy method on Denji. I don't know if you've ever heard of that thing that some people and animals do. They don't value something unless someone else values it first. Like a toddler not wanting to play with a toy until you pick it up, because this kind of reminds me of that. I think she knew that while Denji was in the curious phase of her, that Aki would get defensive, and tip off Denji that in Aki's mind, she's worth getting defensive over. This plays out exactly like that. Aki was actively trying to get Denji to leave, but that only made Denji want to stay, and also Makima more. Because Aki was feeding into the idea that it was worth defending. This push to motivate Denji to stay is exactly what he needed. The anime, at least to me, plays it off slightly differently. In the anime, it seems like it was a moment for Denji to prove his resolve to Aki, but like I mentioned earlier, that one scene with the little girl really changes how you view Denji and how he's reacting to the situation. In the manga, to me at least, it seemed like he was unsure before Aki taunted him, and without realizing it, that confrontation made Denji's situation worth fighting for. Another important thing to mention is that Denji gets the rest of the perks of the good life after the patrol with Aki. And it was after that patrol, and seeing that Denji beat up Aki and still chose to stay, that Makima knew that she was right and placed them living together. For a new reader or viewer, it might just seem like she was just testing the waters to see if they could get along, and that she was just responding in a way of the belief that people that fight are more caring of one another. But someone who actually knows what kind of person Makima is would think differently. She likely had an understanding of the kind of thing Aki would do, and them coming back bruised proved to her that what she had expected occurred. She definitely chose Aki because she knew that Aki would grow to care for Denji, and as that is the kind of person that Aki is. And Denji would follow and start to care about Aki, as well as learning how to care for others through how Aki cares for him. The third person to join their living arrangement is Power, and it was also definitely a part of Makima's plan to have Aki try to kick out Denji. She wouldn't have actually let that happen, but she knew he would do it. Why? I believe it was to give Denji a struggle to stick around in the beginning. She knew that he wouldn't leave because she would always be watching him, always. And she knew that Denji was the kind of person to fight for a situation to be good, because of what happened with Aki. So, having Aki as a distraction while having Denji be on a one-track mind towards her was extremely manipulative. Denji believed that his life was heaven, and having someone around trying to get you kicked out would just make you fight harder. So, when Aki placed Power and Denji together, I think she was going to let it slide no matter what happened, because she wanted Denji to struggle. The more you fight for something, the more you value it, and I think that it is what Makima was doing to Denji by making his early time so hard. We also see that he grew more competent in this environment, because he had a motivation to improve. On top of Denji learning little things like having goals from the others, he slowly learned camaraderie, and power was the catalyst. On their first day, power causes trouble, and Denji is forced to also be blamed. I think that having that be the case was an interesting decision. I think the reason why was because she likely wanted to prevent sabotage. If she had just punished Denji or Power, then they would have likely resent the other, justified or not. So forcing them to learn to cover for one another in order to avoid negative consequences themselves, at least in the short term, was an idea that proved to have merit. Because of that, Power tricks Denji into being eaten by the BBB, otherwise known around these parts as the Big Bat Bat, because Makima sees and hears all of what small animals are seeing and hearing. It's hard to say whether or not she knew, but her tactic of not making resentment build into something more substantial by casting equal blame, but poignantly not punishment, proved to serve Makima well. After the great defeat of the BBB, Denji and Power lie about what happened to cover for Power's mistakes. If Makima did know all along what had been going on, then it went according to plan, and she had faith that Denji wouldn't be killed, likely because of her faith in Chainsaw Man. On the other hand, if she didn't overhear them, I believe that she would have pieced together most of what happened by what they ended up saying as well as what she knew about them, and her plan was still in full effect. This section is a short break to discuss less of what she did to manipulate Denji and the situation he was living in, and more about how she used personal manipulation tactics on him, herself, without relying on others. The major thing I think of when I picture her manipulation of Denji is the finger-biting scene, which actually came back in a later scene and caught me off guard so hard it was crazy. To paint a picture, Denji had just defeated the stupid cat eater, and he was all fixed up after the fact when his arrangement with Power was to be honored. He was neither honored nor pleased by what went down, and he began to have an existential crisis. He began thinking that if life were about making goals only to achieve them and realize that the chase was more fun, then there would be no real point to life. This profound thought is intercepted by Makima. So she tells him in no short terms, nothing. She doesn't actually give him a solution to the quandary. She just pulls him out of it with lust and causes him to chase a goal that she wants now that his goal slot is available. It took a long time for me to understand what was going on in that scene. I watched that scene for the first time as a high schooler without basic understanding of anything. But when I got older and I rewatched the scene, I realized just how manipulative she was being. She turned his existential crisis into an avenue for manipulation, and the impact of that scene would have on the effects of the rest of part 1 is absolutely staggering. Crazy to think that that scene, that seemed intense but not special at first, turned out to be one of the most important points in the story. Now, her manipulation of Denji here was a clear indicator of her goals and ambitions, but also it's a complete and utter misdirect, and that her real goals were so foreign that they couldn't even be perceived yet. She took this major opportunity to shift Denji's perspective and motivation, and he followed the path that she set up for him for the rest of part 1, at least until he killed the gun fiend. This play, it guaranteed almost everything else that she did going forward was going to work out. It's crazy to think that it was so simple. Make Denji want to kill the gun so that when she made him release Chainsaw Man, he would be weakened as a result of the love that people had for him. Absolutely diabolical. It was all a setup right here, and she continued to make his infatuation with her more and more strong as the story continued. She would even make him feel better about his bitter kiss by giving him a lollipop, which she had already had in her mouth. Ew. But yeah, if she hadn't done this, then there was a pretty good chance Denji would have lost his virginity, which is something he explicitly wanted to give to Makima, and is even in the lyrics to the Season 1's opening, but he didn't, thank God. And I don't think that's why she did it, but if she hadn't, things would have gone a lot worse. And in hindsight, I wonder if she would have carried him home if Himeno hadn't beat her to it, if just purely to get in his head. She also starts going on dates with Denji after more people start attacking him. She was already targeted by Mr. Forever Ugly, but it wasn't until after the Katana Man incident that she started going out with him. They went on a movie binge and she wanted to go on vacation with him. I think that probably tell right away that she wasn't actually liking Denji is that fact that it was kind of obvious, but Makima would give a person many reasons to think she does, especially someone like Denji. Many characters are shown to like Makima and think she's attractive or outright want to date her. Even someone as reserved as Aki develops a crush on her, but Denji is separated from them pretty quickly. She states to the higher-ups that he has potential, she stays in Tokyo just for him, and everyone notices, and she also, as I mentioned earlier, goes out on dates with him. This might not be fully confirmed in part 1, but she doesn't seem to do that with just anyone. To an inexperienced, traumatized, and unaware teen, these may be signs that she likes him, but to an adult that knows better, it's clear that she had impure intentions from the beginning. She clearly had an understanding of Chainsaw Man's power, but didn't value Denji whatsoever, as we'll discuss later. She uses the feelings that characters have for her to manipulate them outright. The anime is a perfect example of this tactic, since it highlights how Denji feels about Makima. Throughout the anime, she can be seen as soft, beautiful, dangerous, but still a major predator. It's pretty clear that her whole game is manipulating those around her, and many manipulative characters are often given the trait of being beautiful for the same reason she is, because beauty can blind others. The title for this section is based off of that exact idea. A femme fatale is a term given to a deadly manipulative woman that often uses seduction methods on their targets, much like Makima does in her deep mind-screwing of Denji. The reason why she uses this method on Denji, and the reason it works so well, are extremely notable. The reason she uses it is because her betrayal hurts him more if he has romantic feelings for her. I mean, imagine a betrayal of someone you have romantic feelings for, like cheating, but cranks up to 1,000. She also makes Denji stubbornly want her to control him. Yep. Although there is a chance that it was just Denji's way of responding to Aki's death, the fact that he said that he wanted to be her dog specifically might indicate that it was intentional. She wanted to beat him down so hard that it crushed him to pieces, to the point that he didn't even want to control his own thoughts or will. And she did so in a way that kept her clean in Denji's mind. Denji had no idea that what happened to Aki was her fault, and she only told him the truth when crushing him was absolutely necessary for her plan. I don't think that everything that happened was a result of something she did on purpose, but it is undeniable that what she chose to do ultimately to aid her plan, from setting Denji to grow close to Division 4, to personally manipulating him to be infatuated with her, and want the goals and motivations she wanted him to have, was all a part of her big master plan in one way, shape, or form. After what happened with the BBB, and after she gave Denji the goal of destroying the gun in order to sleep with her, the next part of her plan would be to set up more allies that she could use in her fight against Chainsaw Man. The first of these enforcements we see her add to her collection is the zombies from the fight with the Katana Man. I think it speaks volumes that she did this. This shows that her going to deal with the zombies herself in the first part of the story was likely intentionally to get the zombies for her use. They are extremely dangerous and effective. They're much like Santa's dolls, in the sense that they bite a human, that human turns into a zombie. And I would wager that it was a part of why she wanted them. Even one zombie could be a dangerous weapon under the right circumstances. I also wonder if she had been building these reinforcements to fight the Chainsaw Man from the beginning. This would explain why she chose to stay with public safety. It was her method of making powerful allies that she could use later to defeat Chainsaw Man with. When you consider the fact that a major part of defeating the Chainsaw Man required him to be weakened by people loving him, working in public safety could easily allow her to shift any Chainsaw Man action to appease the media. Not only that, but she would be allowed to act almost freely with an abundant amount of resources, including powerful trained soldiers, those things in the neighborhood basement, and so much more. So, it isn't a far leap to assume that before she met Denji, she might have thought that Chainsaw Man had been reincarnated somewhere, and was using her free time, or just her time in general, to effectively make contracts and gather puppets to use against him. After the zombies, she would gather other allies like Rize. In a moment that's enough to make a grown man cry, she stops Rize from reuniting with Denji, and we later discover that she takes over Rize and likely puts her in the freezer so that she could eat her later. She hid her so that she could use her on Chainsaw Man. I think that is so cool to see how her meticulous plan played out, while she was collecting resources to use against the big guy. This definitely proves that the big guy was packing some serious heat, enough to where Makima had to get the whole world not to fear his name, and then on top of that get some seriously strong beings under her control to fight him like that. Only for her to get cut down by a teenager, which is next, I swear. But I do want to talk about one more thing before I get to the final section. I want to talk about the moments that made my blood boil and my body go into immediate shock. I want to talk about the... Makima had probably woken up with violence on her mind that morning, because she sure did live up to them. Makima's big reveal moment is so cold, and mostly because of the exact order of events. She first kicks off her plan by turning Aki into the gun fiend. I'm not sure how she did this. Maybe she found a weak chunk, so she believed it was weaker so she could control it. Maybe she lied when she said it was in pieces and actually just had it in her closet at home or something. Or maybe she took Aki and the angel to where it was and had Aki fused to it in some weird way that hasn't been revealed yet. But regardless of how, she did. I also think that she purposely sent Aki to Denji in order to get Denji to kill Aki. That might be obvious to someone who's read it, but I thought it was worth mentioning because of how messed up it was. I bet she knew that he would be totally down in the dumps and completely vulnerable. So, she likely planned to pick him up at his place. But when he left to go to the convenience store, she changed routes and brought him to her place alone. Power bringing the cake was likely supposed to happen no matter what, before she picked him up at the park. But because of how far ahead she plans, I don't know if she was expecting Denji to wish to be his dog, but the fact that Makima definitely knew that Power was coming hints that she did expect that, or at least something similar. She could have done that on purpose, or maybe she overheard him talking to himself about it, which she is prone to do. But she definitely had Power show up with that cake. And if Denji had asked for what he definitely wanted at first, then that would have messed up the timing. If I were to make a soft guess, it would be that her original plan was to take Denji to her house, and she already had spoken with Power about picking up a cake right after, and being there at a certain time. Then Makima would manipulate Denji, have him open the door, and then kill Power. The little things like Denji going to the store aren't really within her control, and there's a chance that she accounted for something like that already. Power could have told Makima about Denji's trip, or maybe Power just thought Denji would be home in time for the pickup, but he wasn't because he got lost in thoughts. Although I think it'd be funnier to imagine she forgot than she went to bring the cake to Makima's place anyway. After Makima killed Power, she brought Denji to the headquarters, where she was surrounded by agents. She then had Denji transform to save her, and the climactic battle that followed would prove to start her undoing. The battle with Chainsaw Man was epic. I thought it was funny that when he showed up for Kobani, she tripped like twice or 3 times. That was the first time she made me laugh, and it was the first time I actually enjoyed her presence. It's not like I think she's a bad character before this or anything. It's just that her panicking in the really long Holiday Inn made me not like her. In a survival scenario, she needs to die first, so that everybody else doesn't die with her. And I guess I wasn't as forgiving as Denji when she tried to stab him. She was paranoid and annoying, but her dropping the food as people were getting decapitated finally made me laugh. Even while writing this, but the rest of the battle was absolutely no laughing matter. Makima went all out in defeating Chainsaw Man, and had him nearly dead to rights multiple times. If it wasn't for Power's intervention, Denji would be doomed. I love that. The fact that this was all set off by Makima killing her. But Power was necessary to defeat Makima just feels right. Denji using his 2 best friends as chainsaws will always be cool, and now it's the time we've, or at least I've, been waiting for. Denji killing Makima. After Denji is rescued and he has some time to create a meme, he begins thinking. I think that being told that he can't be Chainsaw Man anymore also helped. Denji's plan was stupid simple, and I think that his hunter would be proud of its effectiveness, although the risk was extremely high. He would use Pochita to create a chainsaw clone, and then when Makima was distracted ripping its heart out, he would sneak behind her and use the power saw to kill her. The reason this works is more interesting to me than the actual plan. The plan is great, but the simplicity of it is more spectacular. This plan wouldn't have worked if not for one thing. If Makima had cared to memorize Denji's scent. The fact that she didn't tells us so much and so little, and I think that this is not only perfect, but poetic writing. From the minute she met Denji, she was finding ways to make him lose himself and become the incarnation of Chainsaw Man. And as Denji pointed out, that meant she didn't even care to think or remember Denji at all. To her, Denji was just the human cast around Chainsaw Man. And she even stated that she didn't understand why Chainsaw Man chose him in the first place. The reason is simple, that Denji helped him accomplish his dream and they shared a beautiful bond. But there was also much more. His mentor later tells Denji that he's the most perfect person to become a hunter. And when he says that he isn't referring to the physical, like how Denji almost can't die, or in terms of power, how Denji has this immense strength at his disposal. No, he was talking about Denji, who he was. Makima not seeing the value in Denji like many others before her was her downfall. If it weren't for Denji, Makima wouldn't have been defeated. He even found a way to kill her without meaning to harm her. Had this been anyone else in the world, or possibly all of fiction, they wouldn't have been able to do it. But Denji truly was the perfect one to defeat her, and it's so beautiful. Even how he defeats the control as a concept and stops her from becoming a slightly different version of the same thing is through something only Denji could do. He loved her through the very end, and he gave lots of hugs to the same being that caused him so much pain. Lots of them.